The Buckeyes opened spring practice just a day ago, and we already have a thought and an insight on where Sonny Styles will play football in 2024.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gotta love spring practicing back in session and figuring out where Buckeyes will play, what the pecking order is in the depth chart, and a whole lot more info as the Buckeyes are back in the Woody preparing for the upcoming season. Welcome in, Buckeye fans, to a Tuesday edition of Locked On Buckeyes. Wednesday. Wow, I went back a day. Wednesday edition of Locked On Buckeyes here on Wednesday, March 6th in the year 2024. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. And this episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Joining us during today's show once again is Ryan Roberts of Rise in Draft Scouting. He also covers recruiting for IrishBreakdown.com. Normally when Ryan is here, it's all about the NFL draft, things that are coming up in that area. But then Sonny Styles, there was a news that came out that he's changing positions. And Ryan covers recruiting, so it knows a little bit about what Sonny Styles is as a player. So I figured, why not double dip? Talk about a little Ohio State, talk about the combine and the draft as well. And Ryan, when it comes to Sonny Styles, I think that he's moving mainly out of necessity because I don't think he's going to be a better safety than Caleb Downs or Lathan Ransom. So move him up inside the box, put him at linebacker. It makes a whole lot of sense.
I mean, it does, Jay, because I remember, obviously, I wasn't covering recruiting then, but obviously I followed the Sonny Styles recruitment because Notre Dame was obviously very high on him as well. I would say Notre Dame probably finished second in that recruitment, kind of from my knowledge, but he is a very unique body type because I remember watching him in high school. You're just like, that dude is 6'4 plus. And at the time he was skinny. So he was playing on the back end and he was moving all around, but he was always one of those players that you envisioned eventually his body might just develop to finishing on the second level. And I mean, like you said, you lose Tommy Eichenberg, you lose Steel Chambers from this past year. I know you got guys like CJ Hicks that are still on the come up, obviously, some really highly recruited kids on the second level. But regardless, Sonny Styles got a lot of playing time in 2023. He's got a lot of raw ability, and he's got the perfect modern builds, I think, and modern play style for the second level of the defense. I think you can really take advantage of the versatility that he brings playing linebacker now for Ohio State.
I'm right there with you. The versatility and the ability to be a better than average potentially cover linebacker is huge. Because as you talk about all the time with the NFL draft, we'll touch on later when we talk about the Buckeyes linebackers that will get drafted in a couple months now, a month and a half from now. It's going to be here before we know it. You have to be able to cover in space, passing at the next level, because running backs, tight ends, even slot guys, the opposing offense is going to try to maneuver you and mess you up and get you in a mismatch that is a mismatch for you, an advantage for the offense. Well, a big way for Ohio State to help their defense this year is putting Sonny Styles at linebacker. I think his body type fits. I think his experience is going to help him. But also in college, they're trying to spread you out all over the place and find a mismatch. Well, if you have him at linebacker, that's not potentially going to be a huge mismatch if it's one at all, because of what Sonny Styles did a year ago, playing more so as a safety than a linebacker. I do think long-term as projection, Ryan, though, I think we're on the same page here. It's a great move for him. I mean, NFL-wise, it's great. And let's just say he wants to play 2 years at linebacker, not one, and then go to the NFL. That's good for Ohio State, too, because it gives you more depth and it gives you experience in a couple years at that position.
Well, I mean, just to see the evolution of Ohio State on the second level over the last couple of years, obviously with Jim Knowles over the last couple especially, but I mean, there wasn't too long ago, Jay, that you had Tough Borland playing linebacker where it was just like you're able to isolate him in coverage. And
I try to forget about that, Ryan.
I know, man. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bring up old wounds there. But I mean, you're talking about a modern 2024 season where you might have a lot of times with Sonny Styles and CJ Hicks on the second level where it's just like athletically, that's just a different caliber, because you always had Pete Werner, you had Baron Browning, obviously great athletes there. But then there was always that one linebacker that maybe wasn't the best athlete of all time, and you were going to find a way to find the mismatch advantage against those types of guys. So I think you are making it modern days less of a dictation for offenses to create mismatches. And what that means is you more athletic players you put out there on the second level, the less opportunity an offense has to take an advantage of said player there. And then for the draft projection, I think this is the ideal scenario for Sonny Styles, because what was going to happen to him, Jay, whether he was a safety or if he was playing, because I know he played a lot on in the slot as kind of like that overhang defender, right? Being that overhang player, while it's very entertaining and while it's fun, one might even say, and it's really cool to watch those big athletes blitz off the edge and do a lot of different things in coverage. It's not very translatable to how the game is played today on the NFL level, because teams are just, I think there was one team last year in the NFL that played base defense over 50% of the time, which tells you
That
that
seems odd. That's a
yes.
really odd number.
Well, it is, because now teams are just going to their sub package so more often because offenses are trying to spread you out. So, I mean, the nickel position has basically become a starting position on the NFL level. And unfortunately for Sonny, at 6'4" and 225, 230 pounds, whatever he's going to end up being, he doesn't fit that spot, right? Like, you're going to put a more traditional nickel out there to face off against some of the better slot receivers in the NFL. That overhang position, it's basically the old Sam linebacker spot. Like, Sam linebacker overhang just is a position that is mattering less and less in today's NFL. You need to be able to, at his size, play on the second level full times, whether that's as Will or as a Mike linebacker. That's going to make him more valuable in the next level, because if he's able to show that he can do the dirty work and stop the run inside and play tackle to tackle on top of the athleticism and the pass coverage upside he has, then he's going to make himself so much more valuable on the next level.
Ryan, last thing here on this topic, it's one that might not be on the minds of a lot of people out there. Even though CJ Hicks has not played a lot in his 2 years in Columbus, I think this upcoming year, with the build and his better understanding of the defense, I think him and Styles might be a better linebacker duo than Styles and Cody Simon or Cody Simon and CJ Hicks. Do you agree that Hicks and Styles might be the best potential? And I'm saying this, realizing we don't really have much film to go off on CJ Hicks. It's straight projection and maybe something that a lot of people hope actually happens. But do you think that Hicks and Styles are the better duo that Ohio State should put on the field?
If they are ready to play, then absolutely. I mean, the upside is tremendous there. I mean, we're talking about two big, long kids who can run for days. I think Cody Simon is a great asset to your team in the sense of he gives you a solid floor to the table, right? Like, he's played a decent amount of football. He's played a lot of special teams. If he is playing a ton of special teams for Ohio State in 2024 and also giving you ability to back up, both Mike and Will linebacker, I think that's ultimate glue guy to its roster. Like, I think he's a very valuable player to have. But Cody Simon, although a pretty solid athlete, like, he has his limitations as a linebacker. And I think that if CJ Hicks is anywhere near his ceiling, and if Sonny Styles starts to tap into his as well, then you will have, for the Buckeyes, one of the more dynamic and athletic second levels of any team in college football. I'm not talking about just the Big Ten. I'm talking about in all of college football. And then you throw in the fact of, like, hey, if an injury happens or some reps are kind of taken away or whatever it is, Cody Simon gives you a good baseline. So yeah, it definitely raises your upside, your ceiling, if those guys are ready to play in 2024.
Love having Ryan on the show, getting the insight there on Sonny Styles moving to linebacker. But that's not why Ryan originally came here. It's all about the combine and what he observed in Indianapolis last week. We'll dive into all that next on Locked On Buckeyes. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. See the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All-in prices, show your total up front, so you know you're getting a great deal before you check out. You're able to buy tickets in seconds with only 2 taps. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. This episode is also brought to you by Billiards Plus. Billiards Plus has the best selection of pool tables, game tables, shuffleboard tables, and more. And the best service in Central Ohio. And guys, check this out. Billiards Plus carries grills that have up to 30-year warranties. Everything you need for in-home and backyard entertainment is at Billiards Plus. And the grills, whether you like charcoal or gas or wood-fired, Billiards Plus has a perfect setup for all grillers. They are family owned and operated. And when you talk to the staff at Billiards Plus, you know you're talking to an expert who won't steer you wrong. Billiards Plus has you covered for all your indoor and outdoor entertainment needs. Kenny, Sarah, and the whole entire staff will always go above and beyond to give you the best customer service in the industry. Billiards Plus, visit their showroom on Dublin Center Drive in Dublin. Ryan, there's always one guy at Ohio State that's going to get a lot of attention. It's Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't remember the day that the receivers were talking to the media or on the field doing drills. I don't remember exactly if it was Wednesday, Thursday. Don't know all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I do know this. I woke up that morning and I went on Twitter. I think it was Steve Hellwagon of 247 Sports of Buck Nuts said, nobody knows who Marvin Harrison Jr. is. We're not sure if he's going to talk to the media or not. No one gave us a thought. The first thought in my head went back to a year ago when DeJuan Jones skipped out on the Senior Bowl media day. And people were like, what's going on? Two different situations. But then shortly after that, Chris Carter said, here he is. He's here. Here's a picture. 9 teams over 2 days. He did his thing. And I'm like, okay, great. Like, I don't think Harrison Jr. needed to talk to the media at all. I don't think it was a bad thing that he didn't. But people were a little upset, it seemed, early on in the day when he didn't show up there.
It was just kind of weird, Jay. Like I was literally I was in the media availability. I was in the media room when there was kind of whispers of like Harrison's not coming. Like there was like a small announcement, I guess, that Marvin Harrison Jr. wasn't going to be made available to the media. And your immediate impulse, because we live in a very negative world, right? Where it's like, oh man, he must think he's too good, or he just left the combine, or like whatever the case might be. And it comes to turn out that it apparently had something to do with, just medicals got delayed, or he had to, make sure that he got something checked out. So like, it was one of those, because if you've ever been to the media day at the combine, the schedule gets topsy-turvy, man. Like guys go overtime on medicals, and there's tough times in transition from getting one guy to one location to the other, and things get jumbled all the time, right? So ended up, when you kind of take it in retrospect a little bit, it didn't matter ultimately, right? Like he went there, got measured, met with his teams. So that's all that honestly matters. Like the media thing is good for us, but it's not a necessity necessarily. And he did, what he needed to do. Now he's going to go to the pro day, obviously, and there's going to be some drills that he'll have to do, because there's some teams that are still very particular and about him, wanting to see him in person. So I know he's already said that he won't test at the pro day, but will that mean that he'll at least do some on-field drills and the position drills and catch the football around a little bit? I think that I would expect him to do something, right? Like I just find it hard to believe, even though there was an announcement that he won't do anything at the pro day and at the combine, I expect that he's going to move around a little bit. So we might not see a 40 time from Marvin Harrison Jr. We might not see a broad jump or a vertical jump, but he had obviously mentioned that, he's busy concentrating on being the best wide receiver he could possibly be for that transition. So I wouldn't be shocked if he at least runs some routes during the Ohio State Pro Day.
I would assume so too. And it will be a little odd that he'll be catching the ball from a new quarterback, because Kyle McCord's in Syracuse. I don't think he'll go back to Columbus to throw the ball that day. And I don't think C.J. Stroud's going to come up from the Houston to throw the ball that day either. So he's catching the ball from either Devin Brown or Will Howard. That might make him a little nervous because of what's happening there, which I think, Ryan, that's a legitimate thought when you're on that stage. All eyes are on you. You're Harrison Jr. Do you really want to catch a ball from someone who you don't know very well on the field? Probably not, but these are things that are going to happen literally in game, in season. you just figure it out and work with it, because your starting quarterback at the next level may go down in the second quarter. The backup comes in, and people don't want to question, will you catch the ball because there's a new quarterback in there? I think he will, but I think it'll be great no matter who throws on the ball. Get out there, run those routes. I won't hurt him.
Mm-hmm. Well, luckily, I believe the rule used to be that a quarterback that throws at a pro day has to basically, the pro day used to count as one spring practice. So, like, if you threw at the pro day, you weren't, basically you lost one spring practice. I don't think that's the rule anymore. Like, I don't think that that's the rule. I don't think that it takes away from the ability to have an extra spring practice there. I think it will be fascinating. If it was my guess, I would say it would probably be Will Howard.
Yeah,
because he's going to be a draft guy next year. Obviously, the 2025 NFL draft, some scouts getting early eyes on him, throwing the football around. I think that would be most beneficial to him, obviously, compared to a Devin Brown, who's going to be a backup in 2024. So I think we'll probably get the eyes there. The good thing is I know not a ton of people know this, but those guys that do, go to these pro days and participate, if you're a wide receiver, for instance, a lot of times they'll show up there a couple days in advance to be able to start working out with those guys to throw, to kind of get some timing stuff down. So I hope Marvin Harrison Jr. participates just at least on that level. Again, it's his choice ultimately if he chooses to do nothing. But I do know there are some teams, and it might not matter because we're talking about a pool of like 4-ish teams that are going to be able to draft Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, we're not talking about a long list. But there are some teams out there that have a very archaic view of the scouting process, and like, they need numbers. They need to see the guy in person. They need to do this. And ultimately, I don't think that that's quite the world we live in anymore, but it would still be nice just from an entertainment value perspective to see Marvin Harrison run around a little bit.
Ryan, let's look at some measurables here really quickly. I got them pulled up here. 6'3.25" for his height, 209 pounds, which I keep hearing 215, 218, but I think 209 for him is solid, right where you want him to be. 9.5-inch hands, 31 7/8 inch arms, wingspan 77.25. How does that stack up compared to what you thought he might be?
Yeah, the size is right around. I mean, he was listed at 6'4" and I think like 205. So his weight was a little up, which is good. I think that play strength is something that he can still improve upon. I expected his height to be a little longer than 6'3", so that was cool. Arm length was a little bit shorter than I anticipated. I thought his arms might be a little bit longer, but the more important part, because one thing that he flashes on film a ton is his catch radius, and his wingspan was actually plus, which tells you he might have slightly shorter arms, but he has broad shoulders, right? He has a little bit of wider shoulders. So as long as the wingspan was good, it was great to see. So it was just kind of a check, right? His height's good. His weight's good. He's moving in that direction, obviously. And then the wingspan is good. So there was no super surprise with where Marvin Harrison Jr. weighed in at.
Let's stick with a guy who was a pass catcher last year for the Buckeyes in Cade Stover at the tight end position. He was also at the combine, 6'3" and 7/8 inch. I was like, wow, 6'3". I thought he was more 6'4" plus, but a shade under 6'4" is not really that bad to me. 247 pounds. 9 3/4 inch hands, 32 3/4 inch arms, same wingspan as Harrison Jr., 77.25 inch there. The one thing that wowed me though, you talked about it earlier before the show, 34.5 inch vert, and his 40 was 4.65. Among those things there, which one caught your eye the most?
Oh, it was the 40. I think on this show before the combine, I predicted like 4.78. I think was the number that I put out in the universe. I thought he was going to be a solid linear player, but I did not expect. I mean, 4.65 is a good number, man. Like, that's a very good number, especially for a guy that, if you watch Cade Stover's film, like, he does a lot of the dirty work, man. Like, he'll block his butt off. He'll play in the middle of the field. He'll extend for the football. So 4.65 is a tremendous thing to see, because I think that shows you that there might be some more athletic upside that he can bring to the table. Because I know he was very productive in 2024, but he's still, or 2023, excuse me, but he was still a kid that you could argue he hasn't been playing tight end for that long. Is there still substantial upside that he can tap into, obviously, with him starting his career as a defensive player, So I think that he did great for himself, because I expect him to be a solid to good athlete. He tested out as a good athlete, like just a good overall athlete. So I think that is a great thing to see. And I think that some teams are going to now start to look at it and be like, hey, there might be a little bit more athletic upside here with Cade Stover. And I think that he is a guy that could potentially solidify himself among the top 5 tight ends in the 2024 class, because it's not a great tight end class. And I think that he brings a great floor, and then the ceiling that maybe he's up in a little bit with the testing is a great thing to see.
Ryan, last thing here on Cade, it's also something that was immeasurable. You're in a 4.45 20-yard shuttle. Didn't see it with my own eyes,
Yep.
but is there something to build upon there with the 4.65 40 in that 20-yard shuttle time where you're saying maybe you talk about the athleticism, but
Yep.
maybe there are areas that a team in the NFL might be able to use him that the Buckeyes didn't use him in that area maybe enough that they probably should have done a whole lot more.
Well, what the shuttle time does for me when you combine it with the 40 is I think it tells the story of what Cade is as an athlete. And I always
Yeah.
thought, and I know we talked about this on the show, I thought of him more as a linearly explosive straight
Correct.
line player than a change of direction guy. And a 4.45 is fine, but
Yeah.
it's not a great number of a short shuttle, which kind of tells you, I mean, for context purposes, like Joe Alt, who at Notre Dame is 321 pounds, he had a 4.51. So like they're in the same ballpark, right? And he's, 60 pounds heavier, or actually more than that, 80 pounds heavier than what Joe Alt is. So it's a okay number. It's not a great number. I think that tells you more than anything where Cade's upside is as far as how he can be targeted on the NFL level. That tells me that linearly, he's a guy that if I get the ball in his hands, he could probably create a little bit more after the catch than maybe what he was utilized at Ohio State. It also tells me that he could be a seam runner, right? He can work the middle of the field down the seam because he probably has some good linear explosiveness. I don't think he's ever going to be a guy that has this super expansive route tree, going to in and out of breaks as good as some other guys, obviously. He's going to be an inline kid that vertically, maybe you can take a little bit more advantage of his athletic gifts because he has a pretty good catch radius and he has some good straight line speed to him.
We're going to continue the conversation with Ryan about the NFL Combine and what the Buckeyes did at this event. It's coming up next. This episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because of eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusion apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. I was one person, Ryan. I'm saving a couple guys in Michael Hall Jr. and Mayan Williams to the end on purpose.
Sure.
But I was kind of interested to see what Steel Chambers and Tommy Eichenberg would do in this event. And I do want to touch on something quickly, though. Is it normal for guys to not bench press at the combine? I thought that was like an annual thing, but there are 8 Buckeye players there. None of them benched at all.
It's funny, man. There was a article that went out. I think it was Arif Hassan, who's a very good writer, who kind of had an article about is the combine dying, and I think the combine importance of testing has died a little bit because a lot of guys just kind of rest on the pro day. Is it a big deal? Would I like to see everybody do everything and just compete and get it over with? Sure, I personally would like that, but ultimately, as long as they get the number, then you're good to go, right? Because there's going to be a lot of scouts that are going to be at the Ohio State Pro Day. Like, absolute shock that that's going to happen, right? I say super sarcastically. So they're going to get the number there. It's not a huge deal. A lot of guys choose not to bench because kind of how the scheduling works is the day that they test. So they do the immediate availability one day. The next day, they wake up, do the measurements, do their on-field drills, and then the day after, they do the bench press. A lot of guys just kind of say, like, I'm not staying that last day. Like, I'm not going to do it because I'm going to do it on the pro day. Because let's be honest, man, we would all love to see it, but the combine scheduling is not the most player-friendly thing in the world.
Right.
It's truly not. Like, that is a grueling 3-day span of meetings, testing, media availability, everything in between. Like, it's not easy. So I don't blame guys for actually not doing the bench press. And it's just become a thing that's a little bit less of a like, people used to, like, probably like 10, 15 years ago when the combine was at its heyday of media coverage, everyone was like, oh my God, how dare that guy not do this this particular event at the combine, like sacrilegious, right? Now it's like, as long as they get it done at the pro day, no one matters as much. It's just about, the equal playing field of being in Indianapolis and all that type of stuff. So
I didn't even realize that the 3 day. I thought
it's
for some
grueling,
reason I thought
man.
it was 2 days,
Yeah.
but I thought you did media one day, but then
Mhm.
you did measurements, the bench press, all those things, and then also your on-field drills, which that would still be hard. Don't get me wrong; it'd still be very, very difficult. I feel like they should spread it out a little bit. Like even like have media there, make it a week longer, 9 day long, whatever it is. Just do it, and you're gonna say, "Well, that's a lot. That's a lot of time. Who cares?"
So Jay, I have a very good relationship. I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but like I have a very good relationship with JC Horn, who came out of South Carolina a couple
Yeah.
years ago. And I remember talking about him during his process and the media day. So the first day, right? They woke him up. They wake up some of those guys at 4 o'clock in the morning, right? To go do medicals. So they go do medicals. They do DEXA scan. They do, the MRIs. They test every part of the body basically to make sure you're good. Bone density, everything in between. And then they go from there to breakfast typically. And then they go to the media availability, in the middle of the day or in the morning. And then from there, it's team meeting, nothing, just a nonstop until pretty much 11, 12 o'clock at night. So we're talking about that first day of being like 4 to 11, 12 o'clock. And then, by the way, you got to get up the next morning because there's going to be more team meetings and then leading into obviously your combine performance in the afternoon, 1 or 3 o'clock. So yeah, man, it's not for the faint of heart, that combine week. And I think that's why you're seeing less and less guys participate fully, because it is not player friendly, man. I think a lot of the agents obviously advocate for the players to, kind of pick what they want to do, because it is a daunting few day process to say the least.
That's silly. That's
Yes.
very, very silly. Ryan, there were a couple guys there at linebacker, which I meant to do this earlier, but we got on a tangent, and I was like, "Oh, nobody bench press. Let's get
Sure.
into that."
Yep.
Tommy Eichenberg, Still Chambers, two guys that I believe needed this event to potentially raise draft stock in any way that they can. I know like on-field drills don't erase game film, but it can help and kind of validate some things that you do. Do you think they did anything to help themselves last week in Indianapolis?
Help themselves. It's such a fascinating question because I don't know how they interviewed with the teams, right? Like that's the main thing. Like I don't know what their medicals were. I would assume Steele is fine medically. I mean, he never really had a hang up. I know Tommy was banged up a little bit this year, so I'd be a little bit more curious to see what his medicals came back on. But I would imagine Tommy and Steele were great interviews. I'll say this. Steele had one of the more interesting media availabilities of the week, man, where he's asking media members, what 4 animals he would bring to a war with them or something like that. Yeah, literally he said, if you could only pick 4 animals to go to war with, what 4 animals would you pick? And then everyone was kind of silent for a few seconds. And he was like, oh, it's an open forum. Anybody can answer this question. And it was hilarious, man. It was really hilarious. So he seems like a colorful guy. Does that help him? No, not necessarily. Right. So I would say it's more stagnant as far as their draft processes right now. They're obviously what they're able to do at the pro day and test, like that's going to be, I think, big time for what their final evaluation is going to look like.
There are a couple guys here, Ryan, last thing here on the show that are former starters at Ohio State, Michael Hall Jr. and Mayan Williams. Mayan's been banged up more than Michael Hall Jr., but both guys went to Indianapolis recovering from injuries. And so when it comes to like of course, they didn't do the 40 in those types of drills that are tested and measurables there. But Mayan came in 5'8.5", 229 pounds. 9-inch hands, 28 and 5/8 inch arm. Wingspan was really, really small, 69 and 5/8. And then you got Mike Hall, 6'2 3/4, 290, which that one was higher than I expected. Wingspan, 81 and an eighth inches. That wingspan's huge for a guy that's 6'3", 290. But do their injuries hurt them right now?
I don't think it hurts Michael Hall because I think, Jay, like this is all a verification process as far as what they test. Like, you see a guy that's super athletic on film, and a nice way to verify that would be them to be a really good tester as well. You right?
Yeah.
Michael Hall Jr., though, you watch his film And I come away and say, like, dude, that dude's super athletic, like absolutely a dynamic athlete. So I think as long as he can do some stuff at the pro day and verify that, I think he's fine. Like, I don't think he hurts himself. The Mayan Williams things, I know he's, still recovering from being banged up this year and everything, but there are major athletic question marks about Mayan Williams. Like, there's major. So him not being able to test in Indianapolis, that raises an eyebrow. If he's not able to test at the pro day, then you kind of understand why the testing wasn't happening. I'll say this is that I didn't hear Michael Hall's media availability. Mayan Williams, though, is a very engaging person, right? So I think he can win some guys over, but what the medicals look like, what athletically he tests like at the pro day, that's going to be super interesting. I also think that it's worthy of note that Michael Hall was only about 283 pounds at the Senior Bowl, up to 290 pounds. So clearly, I think there's some initiative to put a little bit more weight on to maybe quiet some of those concerns. So I'm interested to see how he tested the pro day at a little bit of a higher weight.
I'm keeping right there, Ryan. Mayan being under 230, to me, that's a win. That's a big win. Because if you're injured, and I do believe it's a lower body injury, I would have assumed he would have been 235 to 238 just because of his body type and how those things have gone for him during his career, the fluctuation of his weight. For him, under 230, that's a win for him at that event.
Well, I remember we talked about it in the preseason, and it was at least in the spring he was up to 233 pounds. So I don't know what he played at Ohio State this past year, but I would even hope that it continues to go down a little bit, right? Like 225, because I'll say this, man. If you're just looking at the body type, just seeing him in person, that dude is put together, man. That is a dude that I would personally not mess with in a dark alley. Like, he is a scary looking muscle hamster, man. So I hope that he puts the weight down a little bit, because I truly do like Mayan Williams as a football player, man. I do. It's just the injuries combined with him maybe not being the best athlete in the world. That's going to hurt him a little bit. If he's able to go to the pro day and showcase that, hey, maybe there's a little bit more athleticism than we've been giving him credit for. It's just been the injuries that have kind of hurt him a little bit. Then I really hope that we're able to buy into him a little bit. But there's a lot of question marks, obviously, there right now.
Yes, there are. Love having Ryan on the show. You can follow him on X at Rise, the letter in Draft. You can follow me on the same platform at JSteven07. Ryan does a great job of covering recruiting there for IrishBreakdown.com. It's weird not having the Buckeyes and Irish play this year, maybe in the playoff down the road, going to the 12-team format. I would love to have that matchup. And I don't normally talk trash to Ryan about the Buckeyes and Irish, but I'll talk trash if that matchup comes up. Guys, this has been Locked on Buckeyes here on a Wednesday. We'll see you next time.